learned a very valuable lesson there this week, and it answered a question, I think, in my own mind as well, about what separates the great racehorse trainers from each other. So, why is Aidan O'Brien a genius of a racehorse trainer? Why is Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, the late great Vincent O'Brien? What separated those men, those trainers, from your ordinary mortal trainer? And I think I discovered it this week through an employment issue. I think what separates those men from the ordinary guys is that they treat each horse as an individual, and they recognise the particular individual psyche, psychological makeup, temperament of each horse. And I have heard so many times Aidan O'Brien, for example, talking about a horse having a lovely mind, or a wonderful mind, and so on. And I always wondered about that, because up to hearing O'Brien talking about it, and I've followed racing since I was a student, I've never heard anybody talking about a horse having a wonderful mind or a nice personality or whatever. I have heard people saying that such and such a horse is gentle or kind or whatever. I've never heard anybody talking the way Aidan O'Brien talks about the mind of a horse. And so I think what separates the great racehorse trainers from the average is their appreciation of and ability to tap into the mind and the individual psyche of each well-bred, thoroughbred that they train. And I think it has a lesson or lessons from racehorse training for managing people in the workplace, because you really do need to recognise when you're managing people in the workplace, I believe, that each of them is individual. Each of them has their own particular unique psychological makeup and may well need different managing than colleagues from time to time. That's not to say that managing people is easy. It's not easy. But I think if you're an employer, especially with a small number of employees, I think you really do need to appreciate that each individual that's working for you is different from a colleague, and what will work with one colleague may not, almost certainly won't work with all.
So I think what we can learn as managers of people and as employers from the great racehorse trainers is that each person that you employ is a unique individual with their own specific personality, psychological makeup, tolerance for all sorts of rough and tumble or intolerance, and so on and so forth. And you do need to be very aware of the individuality, I suppose, of each person in your charge. And I think that's one of the lessons that you can learn from the great racehorse trainers like Aidan O'Brien and Mullins and so on. I think that you do need to recognise that you're not just managing a homogenous group per se, you're managing individual people who may from time to time need a different approach, a different management style, as it were, as between colleagues. In other words, what will work for one may not necessarily work for the other. And you do need to recognise, as Aidan O'Brien and so on have recognised in managing racehorses, the unique characteristics, the unique psychological profile or makeup, likewise with human beings. And I think employers could do well to take a lesson or some analogy, as it were, from the likes of O'Brien and others.
The other thing that I've noticed there lately, especially, it's been brought to my attention, is the difficulty that employers have with the Workplace Relations Commission. And their difficulty is quite simple. An employee can bring a claim by simply filling out an online complaint form and submitting it to the WRC. And regardless of the merit of that claim, the employer has to defend the case, because if he doesn't, he's going to be leaving an open goal to the employee, to the claimant, and the unchallenged evidence of the claimant, no matter how spurious the claim might be, is probably going to lead to a win for the employee. So the employer has no choice but to pony up and defend the claim. But regardless of how strong or weak the claim is, and it could be a completely spurious claim, it could be a try-on, it could be complete nonsense, the employer has to defend the case. And defending the case is going to involve time and resources. Time in preparing for the case and liaising with perhaps solicitor, resources in terms of witnesses, getting records together, and then attending on the day of the hearing. And obviously then there's going to be financial cost, and the financial cost will be the solicitor's fees, but also the cost of having employees who are perhaps witnesses in the case having to be off work, and the boss himself, manager, owner, also having to be off work. So the frustration for the employer is simply that an employee at no cost can simply fill out an online complaint form on the Workplace Relations Commission website and stick it in. And it could be completely frivolous, vexatious nonsense, a claim with no merit, and nevertheless the employer has to deal with it. And to say it does have consequences, cost consequences. And of course, when you go to the Workplace Relations Commission, each party bears their own costs. So it's not as if an employer can go along and win and then get their costs awarded to them, being the successful party. That's not the way it works. So there is an element of no friction for the employee in submitting a claim, can, in some circumstances, to be worrying about as well, or to take care of posts to go out, emails, contracts to issue, and so on. So, what's the afternoon is looking like? Busy enough day now. It's the 16th, I think, January.
Judge in the Conor McGregor and Nikita Hand trial has directed McGregor not to disseminate CCTV footage from the civil rape case. He has directed McGregor to return footage to his solicitor and arrange for deletion of any copies in his control.